Digital music. Trends. Digital music. Trends. Digital music. Trends. Digital music.
Okay, so this is Digital Music Trends, episode 104, recorded on the 3rd of October 2012. Hello everyone and welcome to Digital Music Trends. This week we have another chocker-full show with lots of stories to discuss. And again, we have a fantastic panel of guests this week. So first of all, let's start with some introductions. Let's start with Sitar Teli. So hi Sitar, and thanks for joining us. How's it going?
It's going very well.
Sitar has just recently become a third partner at Connect Venture, so congratulations on that move. It's great. And you're previously working at Dotley Howson Technology, and which was involved in SoundCloud, which is how we kind of ended up meeting in the first place. So how is the new venture looking? Are you excited?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's both a startup and a fund, so it's like twice as hard. But it's awesome.
That's great. That's awesome. And then we have Martyn Davies. Martyn Davies is a developer extraordinaire, specialist in APIs and all sorts of fun hacking stuff with his company 6-2 Productions. And also he has just recently joined SendGrid as developer evangelist. So congrats on that. Another move on that front. How's it going?
Yeah, all good, man. All good. Traveling a lot right now with SendGrid particularly.
Yeah.
It's taking up pretty much most of my time. But I was in Lisbon last weekend for a JavaScript conference over there, and
nice.
Tomorrow I'm going up to Manchester for the slightly less glamorous realm of the PHP world.
Hey, nothing wrong with Manchester.
No, not at all, man. Not at all. I'm from the Northwest. I'm not going to say a bad thing about it.
Right. And just like super quickly, what is SendGrid, just for people that haven't heard about the company before?
So SendGrid is a cloud-based transactional email company. Basically takes the headache of when you build an application, you need to be able to send emails to that application, and transactional emails are anything that is the result of user actions. So, a friend request that gets sent, and receipt for something that you bought, password reset, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, if you're building applications, getting your email infrastructure right these days is really hard to do. Most of the time, a lot of companies will build up an email infrastructure. They'll let a bunch of people sign up on like a beta, send out 20,000 emails from a domain that's not known to ISPs, and they'll get spammed quite hard. Yeah. We take away that because basically that's all we do. We have over 100 people at the company now, and that's a company that's just there to do that.
Awesome.
So, and also, you know what? If you're building something these days, you don't want to have to worry about whether or not your emails get there.
Absolutely.
You should be concentrating on building your product, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah,
that's great.
We make it easy.
Awesome. And last but not least, we have Mark Mulligan, who is a super well-known music industry analyst, been working in the industry for years, and he also writes a fantastic blog. And if you haven't checked it out yet, you should head straight away to musicindustryblog.wordpress.com and also sign up to the newsletter on there, because then you get all the updates on the articles. So hi, Mark. Thanks for joining us. How's it going today?
Hi there. I'm doing well, thank you.
Great.
I'm up just north of sunny Manchester right now, actually.
Nice. Cool. So let's begin. I was going to start the show by talking a little bit about the Neil Young story from last week. It kind of broke off on late on Thursday last week, which is the fact that Neil Young showed off on the late David Letterman show a prototype of a music player called Pono that also goes hand in hand with an actual music service that will, the aim is to deliver super high quality audio to the consumers instead of compressed MP3s. And the upsell here is the audio quality. This is an argument that has been made a few times in the music industry in terms of people saying, oh no, this is a differentiator from streaming services, and this is what labels might be able to actually still sell because it's super high quality. But there are a number of problems that go with that. So first question is there a market for a standalone MP3 player anymore? Mark?
Well, I mean, let's narrow down the question a bit. Do you mean, shall we be talking just about as a software player or an MP3 player as well?
Exactly. I mean, I thought I'd start with the MP3 player just because it was the the most fun part of the presentation. It was this weird triangle shape thing. So I thought I'd start with that.
Yeah, so I think if you compare where personal audio listening is now compared to 10 years ago, or even the dawn of the iPod, and you look at what's happened, we've seen consolidation in the software player on the PC, on the personal computer. Our personal computing devices, whether they be smartphones or tablets, well, you certainly get a multiplicity of devices there, but they're all native apps typically. So it's that's a legacy of the or an artifact rather of the hardware strategy. But I don't think many people, apart from real hardcore aficionados these days, really need to have something completely dedicated that just does music.
Yeah.
Our devices enable us to do so many more things these days, and it's creating artificial walls around stuff. Back 10 years ago, it was because that was the content which was most easy to deliver over the internet connections we had, and that was the content which the devices we had could easily support. I think the days of having a device or a software player that only does music are pretty much gone.
Yeah. And Sitar, I love having a VC here because I can ask the question. So if somebody came to you with an idea like that, what would you say?
I would say, explain to me why people would be willing to pay for lossless audio when they're not willing to pay for decent headphones, which is probably the much, much bigger problem with most people's music listening. I mean, one of the best things I've seen in the last few years is the rise of Beats audio, because at least people are finally, maybe they're doing it more to peacock, but at least they're finally listening to decent audio in their ears.
Yeah.
But before that, I mean, it was these incredibly cheap Apple earbuds that you saw everywhere. Yeah. And if you can't get people to care about what's actually in their ear, I don't think you're going to get them to pay for the music that's being transmitted through those really cheap devices.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I'll go one step further. Regardless of how good your headphones are, audio quality in headphones, even with the best studio monitors, is never the same as ambient audio going over speakers. So the fact that we're in the generation of headphones makes audio quality that much less important.
Absolutely. Martyn, as a software guy, what's your take on lossless audio, but also on the idea of having a hardware device that is dedicated to that purpose?
I think it's extremely niche. I mean, most of the people that I know couldn't tell the difference between a 128K MP3 and lossless audio. And I come from a broadcasting background, right? So it's not something that I think would be a massive selling point outside of the people who have always been kind of like, lossless till I die, always putting everything in recording everything in WAV, storing it on huge disks. And I know people like that, but I'm not sure that they even then would want to take technology and hardware advice from Neil Young.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did a little bit of digging on the actual audio quality just to do a bit of comparison. And what I found on Spotify is that they have 3 levels of quality. So one is 96K, which is the lowest one, 160, and then 320, which is what you get if you're a premium subscriber and you specify that you want high quality audio. And a lot of people, I would argue, I agree with you, Martyn, that I don't think they would be able to tell the difference between a 320K stream and the lossless, especially if the headphones quality or the system's quality is not top notch. And so one thing that's interesting about this is that it's actually, I was looking into the funding of the enterprise, and apparently it's a joint venture between Neil Young and funded also by Craig Kallman, which is a chairman and chief executive at Atlantic Records. So it's kind of interesting that an initiative like this comes from within the music industry, and I couldn't find the references to external backers quite yet. I
think that makes sense though, because I mean, I don't know many people outside of the music industry that would lie to themselves that much and actually believe that anyone cares about it.
Yeah.
So I think the music industry is still looking for, not a silver bullet anymore, but is still looking for some ways to still sell music.
Yeah.
That's just a business model that's very hard for them to give up.
Yeah.
It's a bit like if you think about a completely different market, if you think about photography, you still see cameras coming out with higher and higher megapixels, but in the meantime, the most popular camera in the world is that's the camera.
It's a tape.
is iPhone, and most people use Instagram, which seriously degrades the photo that you take.
Yeah.
So I think people care about other things other than the quality of the image or the media type. And no matter how much the market shows it, I think there are certain entrenched players that will have trouble giving it up.
Yeah. And Mark, last question on this one. Do you think that it would have made more sense for them to launch this type of service as a streaming service for lossless, high quality audio? Would people, the subset of people that are interested in the high quality audio, but would also take the bother to download it and upload it to an MP3 player is just insane. It's going to be such a small subset. But do you think it could make sense as a streaming service?
I think you need to go back to who's the actual target audience, because I think they're actually missing. I think they're hitting in between. It's sort of, if you're really interested in really high quality audience, you're going to be going for DSD downloads rather than sort of PCM encoding. So you're going to use someone like Downloads Now, and you're going to have sort of super high quality. You're going to have the high quality audio set up at home, where you recently made the transition to vinyl to CD, and you stick with CD as your predominant source, and you might have a very high capacity NAS drive somewhere in the house, but you're probably not even doing that much digital music downloading anyway. So, so who are these catering for? They're not catering for the super elite of audio aficionados. They're trying to compete somewhere in the middle, and if you're competing somewhere in the middle, well, actually, all the other things for digital music aficionados matter. The things that matter to them is the discovery, it's the quality of the service, it's the ubiquity of the devices it's supported. It's all the things that make digital services count. What makes a digital service count is not the audio file. A 0 cents audio file is always going to win out over whatever price your audio file is if you're charging for it. It's what you build around it. So if you're just trying to do high-end audio and you're not high enough to cater for the the audio files, then I think it's going to sort of fall in the middle with a sort of a non-existing target segment, to be honest.
Yeah. Guys, anything else to add on that? No? Good. Excellent. We'll move on to the next one. I just have one question on the next story. Basically, the story is that, it's 30 years since the launch of the CD. The CD was launched on the 1st of October 1982 with a Billy Joel record officially. Now, it's been 30 years, and it's a pretty decent lifespan, really, for format. It's not too bad considering how quickly things have moved on. Just some ideas on your side. What do you think is the projected lifespans for the CD to really still be a really heavyweight player in the music industry? 10 years? Martyn?
Possibly. I mean, I'm actually still, I didn't even realise that I was the same age as the CD.
I know.
But, yeah, I mean, I'd say possibly another 10 years, maybe not even that. I mean, for me, I haven't bought a CD for the longest time. I still get sent them in kind of promo form, but even that feels like it's tailing off somewhat in favor of digital. But I have to look at kind of where my parents are at in terms of their music consumption, and it's split within the household there. Like my dad is downloading most of his stuff, paying for that. He's fine with the digital. My mum hasn't got to grips with any of that sort of thing. So CDs for her are always going to be important, right?
Absolutely.
So she's in her 50s. I'm sure she won't mind me say, and I think probably another 10 years, yeah, for her, definitely. But my mum is not going to sustain the CD market on her own. So it's it's probably something.
I don't know. Have you seen how few CD buyers are left?
I mean,
I don't know. What is the stat on that?
Is it right now that's still setting? I was going to ask. I can't believe they're still selling them, but I guess they are. But is it? I know in the U.S. it's places like Walmart and sort of big, box stores that are selling them. Is that true? Kind of everywhere? Is that generally the market, or are there markets where CD is still the dominant form?
Oh yeah. So you look at Japan, look at Germany. Absolutely. In Japan last year, the digital market declined. So some markets, the CD is dominant. You look at the balance sheets of most record labels, you'll see in the region of about 60-70% of recorded music revenue still coming from the CD. So now that says less about the vitality of the CD and more about the poor health of digital. But nonetheless, we're in a situation where the CD is by far the dominant platform. It's going to continue to be for a long period of time, and the reason why is because most mainstream music fans just don't get digital. CD was easy. It was one piece of format which you knew it would play in every one of the supported technologies you had. You knew you could play it in all the different places. You knew what you could do with it. You knew how much it cost, and you knew what came in it. Talk about digital. When you've navigated through the 300 odd different download stores which are available in Europe, then you're trying to work out, what is a digital album on one versus what's a digital album on another. Sometimes it's got extras, sometimes it hasn't. You're trying to work out which devices it goes on. You wonder whether you want to give you billing. There's so many hurdles to getting onto digital. It's one of the key reasons why. And I do not believe that we yet have the successor format to the CD. The download isn't it. The stream isn't it. We're waiting for the next generation of music product. And to answer your question finally, until that problem's fixed, the CDs, it might be on its deathbed, but life support's going to keep it going in a vegetative state for at least another 5-10 years yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we look at the subset of people that are actually using streaming services, it's still fairly young. So that could even extend it to 20. Like if people that are now in their 40s and are buying CDs, keep wanting to buy CDs and don't switch, that's it's kind of tricky. Okay, so let's.
Final thing. Yeah? Two things will happen to the CD market in the next 5 years. You're going to get a polarization. So the middle's going to fall out, and you're going to be left with the low end. Low value spenders, about sort of 60% of music buyers account for 18% of spend. Wow. So you've got a vast number of people who spend very little, but they're nearly exclusively CD buyers. They're going to still be there. The ones where you sort of go to motorway services and there's a box full of old Cliff Richard compilations and whatever. That market is going to become a core volume part of the CD market. The value part is going to be the high end, where we're going to continue to see a renaissance of box sets in hugely expensive coffee table CD box sets, which I think there is a very long-term market for, which, as far as I can see, there isn't an end date for.
Yeah, great. All right, let's move on to Rdio. Rdio announced this week that they're going to bring in a new way for artists to make money out of the service, which is a referral program, fundamentally. And this is not something new to Rdio. They've done the same thing last year, talking about developers. They allow developers that basically induced people to subscribe to their service by creating a great app that tapped into their API and then subscribed that way. They allow developers to make some money off that subscription. And so they're bringing that to the artists' base, which is a really great idea, because artists have, of course, a lot more fans than developers. So it might be a little bit easier for them to get people to sign on. So first of all, Sitar, do you think this is something that is essential for a company like Rdio that maybe hasn't seen the same uptake as Spotify, to try and diversify and find new ways to create a viral effect on their subscription service?
I don't know if it's essential for them. I mean, I'm less privy to, I guess, the internal workings of Rdio and how they're doing. But if they're banking on some big name artists to bring in a lot of people, I think they're probably going to be in for disappointment. But if you consider more smaller artists who have tighter relationships with their fans, I think you could actually see some really interesting dynamics there, where the fans might actually care what the artist says when it's a smaller artist that they believe they have a closer connection with, and that artist is far more incentivized to actually bring in their fans, because for them, I think it's $10 per person you bring in. Yeah. It's really a significant amount of income, especially relative to what they get from anything from concert tickets to merchandising to an actual CD or digital sale. I mean, $10 dwarfs probably all of that. So I think the incentive for smaller and mid-tier artists to take on the program could be quite high. Yeah. I don't think you're going to see, when Spotify launched, they had big splashy celebrities like Britney Spears, tweeting about it. I'm not sure how effective that was for them, actually, since I'm not sure many of Britney's fans actually care what she tweets about. But I think some of the smaller people that they had, when I say smaller, I mean the people just a smaller fan set. Yeah. When they had them tweeting about it and talking about it, it might be probably more effective.
Yeah. And Martyn, from a developer's perspective, what's your opinion on the artist initiative? But also, have you got any insight on what happened on the developers initiative and whether that's generated some money for some developers?
I'll start with the developer side. I'm thinking probably not. No. At the end of the day, if you're going to be building an application on top of something that requires subscription, it's never going to get the level of uptake that's going to see that kind of return. Because if you need people to be logging in with their Rdio account anyway, they might as well just be on Rdio. And I don't think there's that much more at the moment that you can do with the platform, other than just straight up alternative ways of doing music discovery.
Yeah.
So obviously they've got search. You could build something that took a bunch of other things and made it easier for you. Perhaps maybe did something that was slightly more tailored than the familiarity features that you currently get in that service. As for the developer side of it, I don't think that many people actually went down that route. Converting a user from an app that you built on top of another app, it's going to be quite hard to do. And certainly, developers don't see that kind of thing very much as an incentive to do something.
Yeah.
The large cash prize type thing, that works sometimes, but even then, not so much. At the end of the day, people like me, music API hackers, are just going to do it because we want to do it. It's not because we're going to get $10 for every person that we convert through it. And, that wouldn't even be the kind of thinking. From the artist point of view, yeah, I agree with Sitar, and I don't think they're going to get many people coming through this from the larger artist side, but I feel exactly right. The smaller artists, those that can nurture their fans and have real direct connection with their fans and speak to them regularly, like very much on their level, they've got the connection where the fans want to help them out. I mean, this is, same way as going and buying their music through Bandcamp rather than downloading it illegally. It's at the end of the day, it's about supporting that artist. And if you want to continue to have them make music, you have to support them in those ways. Signing up to Rdio just to listen to a band that you've probably already got all of the music for anyway, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I don't think so. And therefore, that conversion that they're hopefully looking for is lost.
Yeah, Mark.
There is a risk that Rdio is getting into sort of fan funding through the back door just at the time of the backlash is beginning to happen. We've seen a couple of high-profile events on Kickstarter where people are feeling that the money isn't getting spent in the way they wanted to get spent, and I think this is a sort of an interesting coming of age of sort of fan funding, because there's a sort of degree of, well, is an artist a public servant? Should an artist be accountable for how they spend every penny that you give to them? No, they absolutely shouldn't. And yet, sites like Pledge and Kickstarter and initiatives like this from Rdio do sort of have an implicit, if not stated, assumption that the fan is making an investment in the artist, and therefore there is a responsibility to the artist to deliver something back to the fan. So now I do think we'll see more of the the backlash over the coming 6 to 12 months. However, for Rdio, I mean, assuming that they don't end up getting hammered by the backlash, I think this is a good job of letting them position as being the artist-friendly service. I mean, they don't need to say every time that they talk about how this is friendly for artists, unlike Spotify, because everybody knows that that is the perception of Spotify. It doesn't matter whether Spotify is or is not artist-friendly. Spotify has driven this huge sort of watershed moment of artists actually realising that they don't all get paid in the same terms, and they're not all getting paid equitably, and that there's a huge amount of smoke and mirrors in terms of payments, and Spotify's at the vanguard of that. It doesn't matter whether Rdio is in exactly the same situation in terms of transparency. What they're doing is they're putting this nice big spin saying we're the artist-friendly service. So whether that actually means anything to the subscriber base growth, I probably don't think too much, but it's nice to be able to say you're artist-friendly rather than the enemy, the artist, which again isn't Spotify's fault per se, but nonetheless is the tag Spotify is now burdened with.
Yeah, and just to move on to like a complete rumor mill at this point. Last night there was an article from the Next Web that came out that speculated that there might be some talks going on between Rdio and Microsoft for potential acquisition. Just talking in the complete realm of hypotheticals right now, makes sense? Doesn't make sense, Mark?
Oh, let's hope for Rdio it doesn't happen. Yeah. Show me a single acquisition Microsoft have made it's flourished. I mean, I've worked with Microsoft for well over a decade on and off now, and in the times of my Jupiter and Forrester, and there used to be some people be sat in a media division or a media device division, and they'd have these fantastic ideas. And I'd say, okay, so what's going to make it happen? Well, we've yet got to go through hoop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and by the time they've gone through all those hoops, what they're left with is such a boiled down, basic, non-dynamic version of the original idea they had. By the time it gets to market, guess what? It falls flat on its face. And so do Microsoft really need to be in the music business anymore? I mean, from a mobile perspective, perhaps, but can't they get there with a partner like Nokia? So I don't see there being the strategic need. 5 years ago, I could understand why they might want to do it, but sort of you look at how the the landscape of the really big tech companies has evolved, there's very big, clear blue water now between what Microsoft is versus what Google and Apple, for example, are as consumer-facing companies. Unless Microsoft has this completely flawed intent of reinventing itself as a real consumer company, I think they're making this nice transition away, and I don't see Rdio being a fit.
Yeah. Martyn, do you think it would fit, and do you think Microsoft has got the maybe with Xbox, with that brand, it's got the weight to integrate the service in a way that is good and useful?
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft have got this whole sort of connected home thing that they're pushing towards now in terms of the products that they're creating. And yeah, sure, maybe a music streaming service might be a decent part of that, but I don't think they need to buy Rdio in order to do it. I think they could just license something from somebody else.
Absolutely.
When I was at Universal, Microsoft came to us with no end of new ideas for music stuff, and it was all terrible, and none of it went anywhere. And it's just one of those things. I don't think it would be right for them. I think it would be an over-the-top acquisition for them. And I think it would be wrong for Rdio simply because they're not at a point where they've really figured out what they're doing and where they're going. Yeah. And to sell the service halfway through just wouldn't be the right move for them. And, knowing who the founders are, I doubt that this rumor is true, and I doubt they'd do it.
Yeah, right. And Sitar, it's the same thing that happened with Mog. I mean, I think the only reason why that would happen is if it got to a point where they can't see, would basically give up on the fact that the service is going to become profitable into their own hands, or that they have the ability to get it to profitability in their own hands. And I don't think that's the case yet. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Martyn. The ambitions of the founders are something more. So a sale and they're not really in a position where they need to sell.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think so. So I think it would only happen if the business didn't go as they wanted, and they didn't want to continue funding it.
Yeah,
but both those conditions have to be true, and given the founders, they're sometimes quite willing to fund things that aren't going well for a while to give them a chance to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me throw a question back at Sitar, actually. So I completely agree. I don't think they're about to sell, but let's just say that they had. And that followed on the heels of, Mog having sold for way too little and We7 having paid for too little. To the mindset of investors who are already wary of music investments, what would that do? I mean, so you're basically saying that the only two services left in the streaming business of any scale, one is essentially backed by French Telecom with no real sort of clear strategic vision until they actually get somebody interested in buying the thing. And the other is Spotify, which lives in its own little bubble. I mean, what message would it, what would be the conclusion that the investor space would take about streaming music?
I think it would be the same that they've taken for the last 10 years, which is that music is a really difficult business to invest in. That it's, the technology's been there to make it a significantly better experience for consumers. But, and I think for a long time people thought that was enough, but they didn't realize there's two big problems. One is the one that you discussed earlier, which is that some people the experience isn't good enough yet to actually make it an amazing experience for people. It's not clear and explained and probably delivered well enough for most people versus, say, something as simple as a CD. And the other is the music industry itself, which, I mean, I don't know what the latest numbers are, but the last time I had heard what the contracts were, it was almost impossible for any streaming service to actually become profitable.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was impossible, but it was pretty close to impossible. And I don't know that that's changed. And I think until that does change, I don't see it becoming an area that people are willing to invest in. And I think that's actually going to prevent services from coming about that actually do address the problem that you said before, Mark.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on quickly to just touch upon the fact that the Universal EMI takeover has been finished last week, and basically Universal officially took over EMI, waiting for the sale of the assets that need to be sold. Of course, there are beginning to be some grumbles from the artist side, the artists that are going to have to be sold as part of the Parlophone sales and the other artists and the other asset sales that are going to happen. And one of the points of view is that that the FAC, the Future Artists Coalition, made is that everybody's point of view has been taken into consideration now, and the staff can leave if they want to. Nobody's tied to stay in the company, but the artists sort of are, and nobody's asked for their opinion or for their input. Do you think that was something that could have been done, or is it just the nature of how these kind of businesses work? Mark?
As far as I know, just about everybody at EMI is on an employment contract. They've just got different types of contracts than artist contracts.
Yeah.
So, I think that analogy is a rather poor one. But overall, ultimately they are. They're assets of a company that's being sold. Or, the employees are assets of a company that's being sold.
Exactly.
M&A happens all the time. You don't. It's not many companies who do a democratic system of polling their clients and their and their business partners and the suppliers and the employees. It's just not the way business works.
Yeah, it's a bit of a romantic view, perhaps, of the way that things maybe should work in an ideal world, but it's really a hardcore business decision. Sitar, do you have any sympathy for the artists being from a business end?
Not particularly. I think they signed a contract, and there's probably I would guess there's probably language in there even about what happens if the business gets sold.
Yeah.
And, I guess a lot of artists don't care about reading the contract, or they have managers that they trust or don't trust to read them for them. But if you decided to not care about making that decision and sign the piece of paper anyway, then you've done that. I don't think you can really complain about it afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Martyn, do you think it could be any sort of backlash on an artist front for just in terms of how people that are prospective buyers could perceive the fact that artists are unhappy about this?
No, I don't think so. It's they can complain all they want. At the end of the day, what Mark and Sitar have said is true. They're assets, and there's probably language in the contracts that says that this can happen. If they're going to come out against the now newly formed label and say, oh, you should have asked us whether or not you could do this first, I think it's being slightly ridiculous. And as for whether that would affect the buyers, absolutely not. The general public don't care.
Absolutely.
And there's a couple of other things I'll just very quickly add on that. One, sure. Remember, there's a whole bunch of EMI assets which are going to be divested. So there's a number of artists who don't know where they're going to end up yet.
Yeah, those are the ones that I was talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the other thing is, put it really bluntly, what would they prefer? Would they prefer to be in a home with somebody who's pointedly gone out to go and buy them because they like the bands and the rest of the catalogue which the label's got? Or would they like to end up getting sort of, either in a defunct label or in a fire sale to somebody who doesn't really want them? So I think, they should wait to see where they end up first. Absolutely.
And I just wanted to end by talking a little bit about the Kim.com newest thing, which is his video upload of a sort of a demo-ish demo of the new service Megabox. It's an interesting business model in the sense that the fact that you have installed this widget and then the substitute adverts that you would see normally with the adverts that they have, so that they can fire hose those and make money off the advertising and then subsequently pay the artists, is definitely an interesting way of doing it, and it's probably been done by Trojan horses and viruses across the world without users actually being aware that was happening. But what do you think is the model behind it, and do you think it's just another way for him to sort of provoke the industry? Martyn, on a developer's point of view as well, because I know that a lot of this is going to be technology based.
Yeah, from a technology point of view, I'm not sure that you could really go down the route of trusting anything that comes out of this camp. But it feels as very much as this is something that's just been put out there to kind of rile the industry and to rile the people that are trying to prosecute Kim.com right now, and essentially just to play with their heads just that one more time. It's certainly not a service I can see doing well off the back of it. At the end of the day, it's one of those things that, like Mega Upload, people happened to cross it by chance, started using it, but the only real reason they were was because it gave them access to some content that they were looking for and trying to get without paying for. I just don't see this being anything other than just a slap in the face for the music industry because he can.
Yeah. Yeah, Sitar, do you think it's a sort of interesting take, or?
I mean, I'm not sure I see what the difference is. It said it's going to compensate artists with a share of advertising revenue. I don't know how that's any. Is that really that different from what Spotify is doing on their free service?
Exactly.
It's, and I mean, those rates are really, really poor. They're not, fantastic rates for the artists. So I don't really see it as revolutionary, and I don't see it as particularly that good for artists either.
Yeah, sure. And Mark, I was just thinking about the way in which Megabox might work, and you've posted a lot of tweets recently about YouTube and the fact that it's still a service where you can find most of the world's music for free, just with maybe like a little advert at the beginning, or with advertising around it. Do you feel like this is basically just a different way to put it, in a sense?
So, first of all, unless you're YouTube, there's no money in ad-supported music, and the only way YouTube managed to make money out of it is because of deals that they've managed to strike, and they managed to sustain those deals because the record label has the same split personality approach as they do to radio, which is, half of them think, well, we get sales because of it, the other half think we lose sales because of it, and I think that dichotomy will continue. I think the Megabox thing, let's face it, this guy has never had artists' interests at heart, never had rights owners' interests at heart. And, it's sort of, we don't know the details yet, but I wouldn't be utterly surprised if what he's actually saying is, we are going to do this without striking deals with the majors, and we're going to pay out the artists in our own way that we think we should pay them out. Which, of course, artists have signed away their rights.
Yeah.
That's what an artist does when they sign with a record label and a publisher. They no longer have the rights to their own rights. They've signed them away to third parties. So you have to get in, deals from the record labels, and of course they're never going to get them from the record label. So I think it's piracy hardly disguised. The final thing I'll say is, when I was talking about the quality, the experience around digital music services, the biggest threat that the music industry has got, which has not yet happened, is when somebody pulls a finger out and develops a good experience around an illegal service. As soon as you've got that, then you've got trouble. And Kim.com is exactly the sort of person who could do it.
Yeah. He has the background, he has technology to be able to pull something like that off. Sure. All right. I think that pretty much does it for today. I want to just do a quick round to promote anything that you guys are working on. And if you have any recommendations on things people should check out, then please go ahead. Let's start with Martyn.
I'm going to do a slightly shameless plug for the next London Music Hack Day, which I announced about a week ago, and we put tickets on sale on Monday, and the first batch of tickets sold out in less than 90 minutes before I'd even had a chance to tweet it. Yeah. So there's a huge amount of want for the event this year. 17th and 18th of November in London at Facebook on the top floor of their building, and it's a really good spot. There are going to be more tickets available in the second batch, which we'll be announcing soon. If people do want to come down and check out the event, then they should follow at Music Hack Day on Twitter for the announcement of when that's going to be.
Great, look forward to it. And your Twitter handle is?
Martyn R. Davies, Martyn RDAVIES.
Awesome, perfect. And Sitar, have anything that you wanna plug or talk about?
No shameless plugs from me.
Excellent.
Only because I just can't think of anything at the moment.
Yeah, sure.
Shamelessly plug.
Great.
But you can follow me on Twitter at Sitar. So it's just at SITAR.
Yeah, and I'm sure that if you come back on when you actually have started backing companies, then you'll probably be able to start plugging those.
Exactly.
That's great. And Mark, anything your end?
Lots of stuff under the radar at the moment, so it's watch your space. There's a couple of startups I'm heavily involved with, which will have announcements soon.
Yeah.
I'm also launching a music innovation agency, which will be happening sometime soon too. In the meantime, shamelessly plug my blog, Music Industry Blog, and you can find me on Twitter at Mark_Mulligan.
That's great. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for being on the show, and I'll see you all next week.